Welcome to Beyond the Buzzer. Man, the more I say it, the more I love it. Thank you, ChatGPT. This show is a podcast hosted by myself, Aboudi El Katan, and the great Sam Douglas, one of the most accomplished basketball players ever to come out of the MENA region in Asia. Now, Sam and I are co-hosts, but Sam is the brainchild of this podcast, so I want to say it on air. Sam, thank you so much for including me. I'm excited to finally work together.
My pleasure, my man. Finally, we're doing this, baby.
Let's go.
Let's go.
So what are we doing here? Sam and I are both former basketball players, but also, and probably equally as important, found our feet off the court. But that's not something that's very common with a lot of athletes that play at a high level, both in the NBA, Europe, and in the Middle East. You know, when you really peel the onion and you dive into professional sports, it's the only industry where the demands are physical, emotional, and mental, where the chances of success are so low, and when you do succeed, the time horizon can be so short. You can be 35 years old, retired, and not know what to do with your life. Now, I definitely don't consider myself as high level as you or any of the guests that are gonna come on the episode, on the podcast. But I know that with the first time I thought I had to stop playing basketball, I honestly was, and I don't want to say depressed out of, respect for people that battle that, but I was lost. I had an identity crisis. So Sam, why don't you sort of walk us through your career, how you sort of balanced getting into business and life outside of the sport, and what led you to want to start this podcast?
I'll just go in right and dive into it. I played professional for 16 years. I was blessed to be able to play for 16 years.
Hold on. He's being humble. I think now is not the time to be humble, Sam. Talk your talk. Sam's a 2-time voted best Asia player. He's a 9-time local champion in Jordan. He captained the Jordanian national team at the World Cup. He led the league in China on multiple occasions in assists, which, by the way, is the second best league in the world besides the NBA. And then right after became the national head coach of Jordan. So talk your talk, Sam.
I mean, I stayed healthy for most of my career. I was lucky to play in amazing countries, amazing leagues, such as China, Philippines, Jordan, of course, Iran, and it was fun. The national team level was fun. And then from there, I decided to retire in 2016 and become the national team head coach.
The next day, right?
Next day, literally, I was talking to my agent. I remember the opportunity came from the federation, and I called my agent. He said, let's jump on it. And I literally didn't even run it by anybody from my family. I just took a decision instantly and said, you know what? I'm ready to take the next step and hop right into it. And next day signed the contract and became the head coach of Jordan national team. But I knew I could help. I knew with my experience playing in the region in Asia, I know all countries that I've been playing against for the past 16 years. And I knew my own players in this country. I knew what they needed. I knew how to spark, get the spark in them. I knew how to bring them on track. I knew how to put them together. I know what they needed. They needed just some organization. They just needed somebody to lead them. And I was lucky enough for the president of the federation at the time to believe in me, believe in my vision, and I was able to take that step. Now, granted, it was extremely tough. I had to work through 3 different federations, extreme conditions, very tough. But I learned a lot, and it led me to my next job with the RGB Vipers of the Houston Rockets G League team. 2 years, learned a lot, so much. Of course, ended due to COVID and the issues we had with COVID. But now I'm back at SD13 Sports Academy.
But you launched SD13 way prior than your...
Way prior, 2016, at the same time when I took over the national team. So they kind of both came together. But my passion was always player development, so I knew SD13 was the right thing for me. And I'm still as passionate about it till today. We've helped so many athletes. We've been part of so many journeys. If you look at our national teams right now, from the men to the under 18, under 16, women and males, we put our stamp in most players.
I mean, that's how we met.
That's how we met. Remember back then? I'm seeing this guy with the headphones on, warming up, dribbling. I'm like, yo, I know this dude played in the States. I know he can play ball. The way he's warming up, the way he's moving, the way he's shooting the ball.
But the first time you saw me, you didn't think so. When you first see me, you'd think this guy can't hoop, but then
I was
kind of nice.
And then I think I remember you guys were playing pickup ball. And I hung around because you guys were playing in my gym. And I'm watching, and I'm like, okay, this dude has potential. Who's this guy? I remember asking a couple of the guys, they were like, okay, he's not from here. He grew up in Chicago, but he moves Houston. In Houston. He moves around, and I'm like, okay. And then eventually, me and you started talking, and you were like, hey, I'm looking to go pro, let's train. I'll let you talk a little bit more about that. And that's how we came together.
Yeah, I mean, every time I think about how I ended up playing pro, I almost don't believe it, right? So I was fortunate enough where when I moved from Houston to London in 2005, the UK unfortunately is a bit of a basketball wasteland. And I went through puberty when I was like 12. So I was this size, and I was dominating in the UK for a long time. So I got to a point where I was playing on the national team for the UK. I was a captain for a couple of years. And then I went to the States.
Since math the same way when you were 12?
All the time.
Okay, I'm just trying.
That's why I wanted to make it clear at the beginning that the people on our podcast are way better than I am, because my friends all say I talk too much shit. It's just part of the game.
I interrupted John.
No, you're good. No, it's important. It's good context. I talk a lot of shit. No, so the thing is, like, I ended up going to the States, doing a postgraduate year after I graduated from high school in the UK, because it was tough to get recruited from London. And it was the first time I realized that I wasn't actually that good. I've played against some incredible players that really helped me understand the commitment you have to make if you want to be elite. But actually at that point I responded well, and I went and I ended up still playing D3 basketball. But within a year of playing at college, I broke my ankle. I was working out too much, honestly, which is, a common theme in my life is every time I get to a point where I'm really working out, I overdo it. Still trying to learn how to take better
I remember when I first started working out with you, your hamstring, every time you'll come back a week, my hamstring, you stop on and off. I remember that.
I got to learn to be patient. I'm still figuring it out. But so when I broke my ankle at Babson, I thought I'd never play again, at least at a high level. So when I came to Amman and I moved here for work and I met you and I started playing, everything sort of fell in place in such a lucky way where it was like someone found out that I had a Kuwaiti passport. Then I met you and you said, listen, I can get you in shape in a couple months. I didn't really even know there were leagues in the Middle East, to be honest. And I didn't think I was at the level needed to be to play there. But alhamdulillah, I went. I got the contract in Nadi Kuwait, the best team in Kuwait.
Right.
Played a couple of seasons. I can say my first season was a success. I started like 80%, 90% of the games.
Nice.
My best games were at all the finals. I played really well. And even though I think I could have played better, for someone that hadn't touched a ball and really played at a high level in a couple of years, I played really well. But then my second season was a disaster. And I mean, just being fully candid about it, I think, again, I don't want to use the word depressed out of respect for people that have gone through that, but I hated my life. I was so shook by the politics side of it, right? And when I look back at it, there are definitely mistakes that I made. I think I let them get my coaches and get under my skin, and I didn't respond to adversity the way that I think I do off the court. But at the same time, a lot of things happened to me that I think weren't really fair.
Right.
And it got to the point where we'd be in games, they'd put me in for a minute, I'd hit a three, they'd take me out, and players from the other teams would come up to me in front of the coach and be like, yo, next season you're coming to play with us.
Right.
They just went and they just picked a different point guard, who honestly, he's a dog and he's a tough player, and he taught me a lot about life and how to respond to adversity. But Turkey, if you're listening to this, I would bust your ass every day of the week, Monday to Sunday, twice on Sundays, obviously. But that's what happened, and so my career wasn't as long as I would have liked it to be. I'm still 29. I do sometimes think I should go back. But for me, when I think about my ceiling on the court, my ceiling off it, I like to believe that I have a higher ceiling off it. Right. At the end of the day, the opportunities are endless in venture capital, but really on the court, I think you end at 35. I'm only going to play in Kuwait, so what's the point of going back?
Right. I'm actually impressed with what you did off the court. I know for me, when I heard my ACL, that's when I had the wake-up call. That's when I realized, yo, am I going to come back and hoop? Am I ever going to come back to the Sam Douglas that everybody accustomed to watching and seeing play? And that's when I decided, you know what, I need to start looking into more than just basketball. What's after life, just in case I don't come back. But that's when I started looking into real estate. I started purchasing a couple of apartments. I started looking into the stock market. Do I want to coach afterwards? I just started educating myself. And I always thank God for my knee injury because it opened up my eyes to so many opportunities, so many things. It's phenomenal. I always tell people I played my best basketball after my ACL.
Yeah, I think the most important thing that we're trying to articulate with this podcast is that having passions outside of the sport will actually enable you to approach that sport in a much more relaxed, calm fashion. So you're not as stressed. You're not like, this is all I can do. Correct. If I get injured, I'm screwed. Listen, like literally, if you have that kind of stress mentally, your body's going to tighten up and you might pull a muscle.
I mean, you and I know you're not playing basketball 24 hours a day. All right, let's say you sleep for 8, practice for 6. You got a lot of hours.
Yeah, but this goes back into, I mean, again, the whole gist of the podcast is you have this, idea of what professional sports is,
right,
and the actuality is very different, right?
True.
And there is time to devote towards other passions, to devote towards, improving your financial situation.
Right.
But because the leagues around the world, besides maybe the NBA, don't actually do a good job of helping their players understand what's beyond, I think this is where the issue is. And I think this is where hopefully we're going to have a lot of success with this podcast, is understanding that like these leagues around the world will build you up when you're playing well and then toss you aside as soon as you're done. And they have responsibility to actually educate players on how to better spend money, how to better save money, how to better come up with other passions, other projects. And I think this is where I hope a lot of people become interested in our podcast.
I so agree with you. I am very excited for this podcast because I've seen so many players that were lost after basketball and even other sports in general. So I'm hoping we can open a lot of young players' eyes that can learn a lot from the guests that we're going to be having on this show. I know I was lucky enough that I knew what I wanted to do when I started at the 13th Sports Academy and go into coaching. I'm very happy, very passionate about it, and I'm very committed to it. Saying that, I'm still always looking for the next venture. I'm always motivated by new ideas, something new to keep me going, something that excites me.
Just to give you guys an idea of what kind of man Sam is, this morning at 8 a.m. he's training me. 10 a.m. he's got another session.
Right.
And then we've been in the studio all day since. He's going to go home, work out, and then spend time with his wife and kids. So, I mean, how does wifey handle all the stuff you do?
In reality, she's always supportive, but I know deep down inside she's like, what is wrong with this dude? How can he manage all this? And I remember when I even shared the podcast idea, she was like, do you even have time?
That was my worry, by the way. I'm like, you approached me with this idea, and I'm like, this is such a good idea, but like, are we going to do it? Like, is it actually going to happen? And so to see this come to fruition, 4 or 5 months later is pretty crazy.
But, like I told you, I always follow my passion. What was your passion? When you left basketball and you went into what you do right now, venture capital and evaluate companies and things of that nature. Tell me more. How much do you enjoy it? What things do you look for? What gets you up in the morning? Because I know you still train on every day. I train him, by the way, at least 3 to 4 times a week when he's in town because he's always traveling. But tell us more about what you do.
It's interesting because I actually never had a passion outside of basketball. And it wasn't really an injury that caused me to think differently. It was a stroke of luck.
Right.
I went to, again, so when I was applying to schools, I actually had an opportunity to be a preferred walk-on at Lehigh. Okay. And that I was set. In my mind, I'm like, I'm going to go play D1. And then my mom sat me down on December 30th of 2012 when I was applying and was like, you're a dumbass. You need to apply to more schools. You're not going to play in the NBA. Sort yourself out. On the same day, one of my best friends who was playing on a scholarship at Lehigh, who's going to be a guest on this podcast, called me up and was like, my brother, I love you. Even if you are good enough to play, you're a preferred walk-on. They're not going to give you time over a scholarship person. So that's what led me to apply to Babson. Okay. And then when I did break my ankle at Babson, I'm surrounded by people who are just starting businesses, by a school that's empowering people to start businesses. So in college, I then started a social enterprise, not really a business, but a social enterprise that was aimed at teaching refugees how to start businesses and how to have analytical leadership skills. We did pretty well. I outsourced my curriculum to a couple of different people. We ended up teaching over 130 refugees in 3 different programs. But what really changed my life was that I had a friend that worked in the Huffington Post. She wrote about it. Amazing. It got picked up by the partners at Dash Ventures, which is where I work now. And they reached out and they offered me a job as an analyst. And I remember being like, at that point, so unsure of who I was as an Arab because, my name is Abdel Mohsen Al-Qattan, but I spent my entire life in Houston, London. Right. And only at Babson did I start to have Arab friends. And so I saw this opportunity. I was actually applying to like Amazon, Google at that point, sacked everything else off and was like, I'm going to Jordan. So I came here and right away I fell in love with venture capital. But what I think, as I look back on it now and I peel the onion, it's like there are actually a lot of similarities between VC and basketball. So for example, guaranteed failure. You're going to have terrible days in basketball. Right. And you're going to make, I don't want to say bad investments, but you're going to make investments that don't work out in venture capital. Statistically speaking, you make 10 investments, 5 are going to 0. Wow. Done. And so I think what that tells you is that you have to have a sort of resilience that I think I've built up over time. Funnily enough, more off the court than on the court. I think I still struggle with my emotions on the court sometimes. So that's one. 2 is accountability, because you're the only person who can blame when things go wrong. Sure, in venture capital, again, something like the pandemic can come and completely change the way the world works. But ultimately, if you keep up to date, you read, you're always engaged, you're there for your founders, you can't do anything else, right? So for me, it's like that kind of accountability that's so commonplace in sports is also very relevant in the office. And then in terms of what I do now, it's just I'm motivated because I work in a very unique situation. Typically in venture capital, you raise money from external people. Those people have a say in where you invest or what you invest in. No, we're not like that at all.
Okay.
Our co-founders, our three of them, are the limited partners, the people that put the money in the funds.
wow.
So they control everything, and they are so empowering to me as someone else who works with them. So it's those three and myself on a full-time basis. And they encouraged me to go play professional basketball, and I did it.
Right.
They just said, you have to come back. They encouraged me to do the podcast when they found out about it.
Amazing.
And they give me so much responsibility despite the fact that I'm so much less experienced than all of them.
Right.
And so, again, a stroke of luck that I decided to just follow my gut and take this job, but also the fact that I have employers that really allow me to sort of work in the way that's best for myself.
This is phenomenal because let's touch on that. It's all about who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Your inner circle is everything.
Yeah.
You've been blessed having the right people around you, supporting you when you want to go ahead and play basketball, when you want to go ahead and try another passion. This was all about.
Yeah.
I've been as lucky and as fortunate that I've been having great agent, great family support, great friend support, and all of it. And even I got married, great, of course, wife support. And that is the key in everything.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, if you don't have that support, you can't succeed. You can't do it alone.
No.
And this is the purpose of this podcast. I want to put so many stories out for the people on our podcast for people to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If you can learn one thing from every guest that we can have, we've accomplished something big.
I mean, that's the goal, right? But, one of the things you and I spend so much time talking about as we're building this is what's the point and what's going to set us apart. And I think the big thing for me is authenticity.
Right.
Is being honest.
Correct.
Not only talking about the struggles we both had on and off the court, having guests who talk about that, but also sort of articulating that it is actually possible for you to have multiple passions, and it does benefit you to do things outside of your main career. And that doesn't mean only in sports, right? This isn't a podcast only for athletes or only for aspiring athletes.
Right.
It's just to show and to demonstrate, to elucidate that in life, balance is important.
Right.
And actually, not only is it important, it'll allow you to excel in what you do most.
True. Or what's that saying? They say you got to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, right?
I mean, no smooth sea ever made a good sailor.
At all. I mean, look, everything that I've done hasn't been easy. Even when I decided to invest, I remember I bought a land for a certain amount, then went to shit. You know what I mean? Excuse my language. I invested in a furniture company, in a brand, lost money in that. Then went to real estate and apartments. That did well decent. Yeah. I went into SD13 Sports Academy. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed. It did well. You know what I mean? That's because I was passionate about coaching. It's been a roller coaster ride. It's very tough. You know what I mean? Because you don't control the outcome the way you were when you were as a player. You want to kind of prepare your team. You want to kind of get them ready. But at the end of the day, they control the outcome. You don't. You're a coach on the sideline. And then you're only as good as your management and your support. You know what I mean? So I always told people, for a coach to succeed, his upper management got to be supportive. They got to be right there for him, give him every tool he needs, whatever he needs, for him to be successful, for him to have a chance. But if they're behind the scene, orchestrating, not supporting him, he can't succeed. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking out of experience. It hasn't been easy. Coaching's been one of the toughest things I think I stepped into. Playing was hard. Betting on myself every year. I never signed a 2-year contract with anybody. Yeah. Although I was offered, I just never believed in it. I always wanted a year and 2-year contract. I always bet on myself, and I always wanted to put in the work, and I knew I deserved more the following year.
That's what's tough, right? With the sport, you can bet on yourself, and you can only blame yourself. Right. I think one of the biggest challenges in life is when you do something that unfortunately other people can have a say in,
right,
or have influence on. And if you do the best you do, then outside factors can still cause not the desired outcome. So I think part of also what we need to make clear is that you can do all the right things and the wrong thing can still happen.
100%. But you're learning from it.
Right.
At the end of the day.
100%.
You got to go through the process.
Oh man, I made some wrong investments in business.
I mean, it's just part of the growth.
I think so too. I think for me, what excited me most about this was, and I think we can allude to it without saying this, we have so many exciting guests coming on the podcast.
Ooh, I can't wait.
People who embody what it means to do both during their career. Yeah. People who already played, at the NBA, WNBA level and are now working outside. And also just people that we think will help give away some nuggets of information for any of our listeners.
I can't wait. I mean, it's going to be fun. I can't wait for people to find out our first guest is going to be a phenomenal.
Don't ruin it yet. Or should we tell them? I know you can tell him.
Can we?
Go ahead, it's your man.
Our first guest is going to be my boy, my man, God Shamgod, Mr. New York, one of the best point guards come out of New York. I can't wait for you guys to hear his story, the legend behind God Shamgod. I can't wait.
Khalas, we'll catch you guys next week. Shamgod, we're excited to host you. See you then.
Hold up. Make sure you guys follow us, Beyond the Buzzer, Pod 13 on Instagram, YouTube, and all the podcast applications. Let's get it.
We did it.